Hi, welcome to Classroom Community. Question: how do you celebrate the end of a school year? In these next few videos, I'll share some year-end traditions that celebrate and honor a year of learning, working, and playing together in a classroom. So stick with me. Let's get started. The first year-end classroom tradition that I'd like to share is a gift that I prepare for my students every year and present to them at the end, the last week of school. It's essentially a slideshow presentation. And at the beginning of the school year, I start taking pictures. I'll take pictures of my students in the middle of group work, on projects, on an excursion, special activities. Once I've gathered my photos together, I am then in the create the presentation phase of the project. And for that, traditionally I used to use Windows Live Movie Maker. Then I move on to iMovie, and now you could probably even use Canva. A couple of things to keep in mind and super important. Number one is to check the Freedom of Information forms and ensure that you have permission to take photos of students. And over the course of the years, it has happened that I have not had permission from families. And what I've done is I've called the families, I've explained the reason that I'm using the photos and that I'm preparing a year-end gift for my students. And then usually by the end of that, conversation, I end up getting permission to use the photos once parents know what the reason is and they don't want their child to be excluded. So anyways, definitely important to check Freedom of Information, making sure you have permission to photograph your students. And then of course, the other thing to make sure of in the preparation stage of the project is to make extra sure that every student in the class is in the slideshow at least once. So not, of course, obviously not to forget any of your students when preparing the presentation. So it takes a little bit of planning, because what I like to do is on the day that I'm going to be presenting my students with this slideshow presentation, in advance now, depending on whether you have access to Chromebooks in your classroom or not, we don't, we have to sign them out. So I make sure that I have arranged to sign out Chromebooks enough for each student prior to showing the presentation. And then we watch the presentation. Students always at the end want to watch it again. And so at that point, I let them know that I, in advance, had shared the presentation with them in their Google Drive. Our school board uses Google. So I pre-share the presentation with all of my students in their Google Drive. And so then once they get their Chromebooks, we watch the presentation, they get a Chromebook, I teach them how to add the presentation to their drive so that it's no longer in their shared folder. And then they just watch it together. I give them the afternoon to just have fun. Watch the video together, they laugh, they reminisce, and they would just watch it over and over. Lots of physical changes happen in primary grades, so it's really fun for them to see that and to realize that, we've passed a year in a life together. The other thing that I find really important and that we work on in my classroom throughout the entire year, we call it the respect model, which I'll talk about in another video. Just the importance of making sure that students understand that remarks that they may have or comments that they may have after watching the video or while watching the video need to be respectful. And I teach them the difference between appropriate and inappropriate comments, and we do a lot of in-depth talking about that over the course of the school year so that no one is having any hurtful feelings after the video because of a comment somebody in the class may have made. This tradition or this gift is, to me, much more valuable than any material gift that I could give my students. They cherish it for years to come. Oftentimes, many years after my students have left my class, teachers that they'll have will tell me that still later in much higher grades, they'll still keep this slideshow presentation in their Google Drive and they cherish it still. So for me, a really special tradition that is a pleasure for me to create for the class. Up next in this series about year-end classroom traditions, I will share a tradition that I like to call the memory bag. If this was helpful, be sure to subscribe for more tools and resources on Classroom Community. See you next time.